All right, let's take a moment and begin by just finding 5 simple breaths, just grounding ourselves here and now. If you can close your eyes, close your eyes. If you can ground your feet or hands in some way, I really invite you to please do so. And let's just get in touch with the breath. And let's start with a nice little exhale through the mouth. Really feeling your body just really getting heavy and drop with every passing exhale, and greet that with a big giant inhale. Try to fill the bottom, the middle of your torso, all the way to the top of the chest. And exhale out the mouth nice and peacefully. Let's keep going. Inhale, bigger breath if you can. Exhale. Yeah, good. Again, big breath in. Exhale, let it go out. See if you can.
Michael Scott Overold here, copywriter, content strategist. That's the voice of Will Schneider of willnotfear.com and the Men Talking Mindfulness Podcast. I've been so excited for this episode for several reasons. One is that Will begins Men Talking Mindfulness with a breathing, meditation, mindfulness practice, which I immediately asked he'd do for us if he was willing. He said, sure. I was like, great. So I was thrilled about that. The second reason is that while mindfulness has become a major part of my daily experience, I found men less apt to talk about mindfulness than women. So here was a dude who regularly talks with other dudes about mindfulness. Why would I not be thrilled? Here's something I have to acknowledge, though. I was slow, too, at implementing a mindful practice. For a while, I admired it from a distance, you might say, thought it was a good thing, something I should start doing, but just never did. It wasn't until I saw it as a means to another end that I was moved to begin my day with it. I've talked about this before on several episodes, that Shankar Vedantam's conversation with Kristen Neff was the kicker. Neff's research has found that mindfulness is the first step necessary to increasing one's self-compassion. And that's where I was. I was in a mental and spiritual space where I desperately wanted self-compassion but didn't know how to get there. And mindfulness provided the road. Anabasis is the ancient Greek word for the ascent or inward journey, and today I'm journeying into the world of mindful meditative practice with Will Schneider of the Men Talking Mindfulness Podcast. I hope you enjoy.
Be here instead of trying to go somewhere else in the mind, into the future, into the past. And this breathing is always available anytime you need it, just to kind of calm down. You can really make big strides in becoming more present in the moment by just finding 5 breaths, 10 breaths if you need, and maybe going for a walk and breathing and becoming more mindful of where, who, what, and everything that's going on right here, right now. Thank you for joining me in that opening practice. My name is Will Schneider. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm the co-host of Men Talking Mindfulness. I live in New York City. I've been in New York for almost 20 years, which I feel New York is the place that helped me to grow up and be the person that I am, the man who I am, and the man that I'm continually becoming. So I'm really grateful for that. What really drives me is to have a happier, more peaceful world that's built on love and trust. And I continually use the practices of mindfulness and meditation to inform my own life and help me bring more of that to my world and everyone else that's in my world. And I teach it continually, and I'm really focused on teaching men because I think we all get to all hands on deck. because the world is definitely not getting on easier, I feel. But it can be a lot easier if we begin to practice and take mindfulness seriously in the practice of mindfulness.
How does living in a place like New York City influence your mindfulness practice?
Well, it's I think it's there's more opportunities to practice, So instead of like, I'm on the subway quite a bit, and seeing all different forms, all different people, all different sounds, all different expressions, and trying not to judge, trying to stay, centered, not get thrown off by smells. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff that are happening around the city, but also instead of just trying to maintain, non-reactionary state, how can I bring more peace, and how can I bring more kindness and happiness to the people that are around me, or how can I help people? I mean, there's several opportunities throughout the day that you can help somebody, find their way, somewhere in the city, or pick something up when something has fallen down, and it's just a real test, a massive test of patience, and that's a big one, I think. Waiting for the train, and things are always going wrong, and it adds to that. It adds flexibility too. So I think I'm more adaptable, and more I can adjust to things a little more quickly because of how fast the city continually moves. So yeah, it's fun living here. Yeah, God.
Were you there throughout the pandemic?
Yeah, I was here. I was very lucky, actually. I just March 1st, 2020, I moved into my own space. I had a couple of roommates before that. And thank God I had my own space in right March 1st. So, and yeah, it wasn't, I remember, because I'm in New York City and all my family and friends live elsewhere. And everyone's like, how's New York? How's New York? And I'm like, it's actually really good. Like, I know that the news, and they seem to make it so bad. And actually it was bad at times. Like, I had a hospital at my old place I lived in, like 2 blocks down, and they had the refrigerator trucks there, and all night long there were ambulances going by. And but one thing I've lived through Hurricane Sandy, I lived through blackouts, I lived through massive blizzards, and there's a heart in New Yorkers that is true, and it comes out in the middle of all the crises, like all those crises I just mentioned. Like, somehow we get together, we make it all happen, we have each other's back. And from the outside, you might not feel like we have like a very rough edge. A lot of New Yorkers that, and the kind of New Yorkers get a bad, rap in some ways for that. But when you live here, shit starts going down, boom, like New York steps up. And I had a lot of friends that were leaving the city at that time. Like, oh my God, get out while you can. Like, I'm going to go upstate and get away. And I was like, I'll go down with this sinking ship, because I believe, the power of New Yorkers, and just this, what makes this such a great city is the people. And we've thriving now after the pandemic, like in so many new ways. So it's kind of fun to be here as well. Like, kind of post-pandemic, who knows what's going on with the pandemic these days. But hey, I was walking around today, and there's just people everywhere. Restaurants are packed, so New York is an awesome place. Great teacher for sure.
Yeah, no, it sounds like you're very proud of being a New Yorker. It's been a while since I've been there, and I would love to make it back there. It's been a long time.
We'll have coffee, man. Come back, please.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
So I've gained a lot from mindfulness, and I know that's kind of your deal. And as I've stepped into the mindfulness space, I've seen so few men, relatively speaking, even though one of the biggest proponents of mindfulness was Thich Nhat Hanh.
Yeah, wonderful.
Why is this, do you think?
Why is it that there's so few men in this space?
Well, how about this?
Yeah.
Has that been kind of your experience too?
100%. Like, I mean, especially as teachers, especially as a straight teacher, in a lot of ways. I mean, I'm not, hey, nothing against my sisters and my gay brothers out there. But and just even that alone, I think it's, when I still to this day, like I taught a class last night in the city, and I only had like maybe 30 people in there or something like that. And there was 6 guys maybe, so just even people practicing. So therefore it's like, what is the body of your teachers going to be if the population that's showing up in the class is heavily in one way or the other? What I'm continually finding as I go down this path to help all people with mindfulness and meditation, these practices, but really, focusing on really helping more men is, we haven't been taught, and we still to this day latch on to like the macho-ness of things, like how tough I am and how strong I am and how hard I need to be. And, I'm trying to teach your soft skills to hard men. and also, so it's like, I don't know. I mean, I think it's, there's something about men, that, and I've seen it many, many times when I moved to New York, and I moved to New York years ago to be an actor. And, my God, I have a lot of men that I grew up with. Like most of my family was men growing up. Like my generation and the people that lived around me, my cousins there might've been like 14 of us, 15 of us that rolled all together, and probably maybe like 17. And there was like 5 women typically. And there's just all this, testosterone around very, very, very typically. And, I mean, and that's fine. Hey, I mean, I'm, cause now I can really, because of that upbringing, I feel I know I can speak to men because I've been there. I'm still there sometimes. I get stuck in a lot of ways with the old stuff that's still in there for my programming, and so I feel like in male dominated structures, like we're always trying to bring each other back into like, let's just keep telling the same story or keep living the same lives and let's keep doing the same things, because if we start to change, then it's like, oh, wait, like, if I start to understand my feelings, then I might understand myself in a deeper way, and I might kind of pull away from the pack. So I feel always are pulling each other back into this same space of this, machoism, or, it's been described as like hypermasculinity, or we talk on the show sometimes as like toxic masculinity. And I think a lot of men are just scared. I bet there's a lot of men out there that want to teach meditation, that want to teach more mindfulness, that like lean into the soft skills of life, but that makes them look soft. And if you don't have that core identity, or you lose that core identity that a lot of men our age have been raised with, then who am I, and what am I, and then where do I fit in this society? I mean, I don't know. There's probably several other reasons why, but it's just not looked at as manly. Like I'm not, doing hard shit. I'm not like, like taking up a jackhammer or building stuff, which, hey, I love all that stuff. I grew up a lot, my grandfather was a carpenter, like I love doing all that stuff, but it doesn't mean that you can't sit and meditate. It doesn't mean you can't have an emotional conversation with another dude.
Yeah.
That's something that's meaningful. Yeah.
Well, I think that's one of the things I really appreciated about your podcast. And I'm thinking specifically of the conversation that you had with the fighter pilot who ejected at almost Mach 1, right?
Yeah, 695 miles an hour he ejected. That's unbelievable. Keegan Gill, his name, was amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's is that an example of how you're trying to reposition this conversation for men? What I mean specifically with that is podcast, Men Talking Mindfulness, right?
Yeah.
And, you're bringing on, a fighter pilot, among others. I mean, you're at what episode are you at?
Shit, we're over like 150 now or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I mean, this is not, I mean, I think we need to recognize, some of the people who you're bringing on, to reframe this conversation. Is that a deliberate move?
Yeah. I mean, it's Well, it's also, there's a willingness too. Like a lot of these men that have come on the show, like they've reached out to us, like in just the last couple of weeks, it's like, and it's funny because, I'm very blessed with the show, how I got introduced to John, that John and I really hit it off, that John is like just such a good dude. And we're so connected around this mission to open mindfulness up to everybody, but like, because we're two men talking about mindfulness, and that's the name of our show, Men Talking Mindfulness, like, a lot of men, our audience is like 78% men. And because of John's background, like as a Navy SEAL, like he's the American gladiator. You know what I mean? And I'm the hippie from New York, right? I'm I'm like it's funny. Like I'm actually a little taller than John, like he's, we might, who is stronger, I don't know, but that doesn't really make a difference, but we have these two, like, men, like, what people consider manly men, talking about, vulnerability and authenticity. Yeah. And, we've had multiple other Navy SEALs come on, and I think it's like, because they're out of the military and they've gone through that hard life and they've gone through that programming of like being a hard man, and then realizing when they get out, it's like, whoa, like that's very hard for me to live that way post-military. And because they've also been so infused with being servant leaders in a lot of ways, or like serving the good, or serving someone else for a higher cause, like they're able to, repackage a lot of what they're learning within this intense training, whether it's a SEAL, whether it's an Army Ranger, whether it's like some other expert that's in the military. And then how can they help other people? And how can they help their brothers in a lot of ways, because they're just so suffering. And I think one thing that's really waking up a lot of veterans and men in general is the suicide rates.
Yeah.
I think it's like 22 people a day. Veterans are committing suicide every single day. And it's like, how can we help? How can we, and John knows people. Like we had William Brannon on, who was a 27-year SEAL or 26-year SEAL veteran. And, he's really trying to help bring more vulnerability to people and understand, well, how that is like in a superpower in a lot of ways. And so it's really fascinating how this is kind of growing, and it's all John and I and other people, and like yourself, like we're on the frontier of this kind of movement of creating mindful, compassionate, kind, patient men.
Yeah.
But still not losing, any of, we're actually gaining power. We're gaining strength. And not losing anything at all. And but it's then to try to bring people into that conversation is definitely a challenge. So we just keep doing it. We just keep doing it. And have somebody like Keegan come in that ejected at almost Mach 1 and have like his whole life was devastated. And then he literally, he got put back together surgically, and then he got put back together mentally. And now he wants to start doing more of the same thing, like help more men. Yeah. Help more men be kinder men, and soft and hard, flexible, not rigid, and rigid breaks.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Part of that story, I want to make sure to point out that there was a 16-foot great white shark underneath him when he was in the Atlantic, right?
Yeah, and they said they even, before he went on that mission, remember they said it's a good episode of it. It's just it's one of my, and he went on forever. They were telling him
it is 2 hours long.
Yeah,
2 hours and 15.
But it's worth it, dude. But they were talking or busting his balls, saying you're going to get eaten by that shark later today, and then sure enough, he's in the water.
So on the Will Not Fear personal brand website, the central argument that I see on your landing page is mindfulness and yoga increases self-confidence. Yeah. And I can't say I disagree, but I don't know if I can necessarily articulate a direct connection. Can you?
So the self-confidence in these practices comes from, being dedicated to the practice. I think being dedicated to something that is so healthy for you is one thing that you keep showing up, and you keep learning new things about yourself. In the physical practice of yoga, I found a deeper level of strength that I didn't know I had. I found new flexibility, and therefore new agility and new stability and strength, like I mentioned, from the physical practice. That's going to help me to just be more confident, because my body kind of flows a little bit more freely in the world, because I can sit longer in a chair, or I can hold space in some way. The meditation practice helps me to get know my emotions, which are I can use as an asset, instead of allowing them to yank me around all the time. Which a lot of people ruminate on their feelings and this and that and their thoughts, and I can pull myself out of that. So, but also, I'm able to put myself in any situation and find my way out, or pivot in the moment and just go in another direction completely, because I keep getting down to not necessarily asking who is Will Schneider, but it's how do I find more peace? What is kindness? What does it mean to be more patient? Right? What does it mean to really listen? What does it mean to just shut up, and instead of talking, just listen? And all these soft skills, again, that I've just been accumulating and I've been continually teaching. It just, I don't feel I'm scared of almost anything, because what's there to be scared of when you realize, when you go inside, it's just, and I've had some really, really deep experiences in some of the silent meditation retreats I've done over a 10-day period, 10 hours of meditation a day. It's intense. It's very intense. But when you get down on the most basic level, and you kind of, all of this chatter and is dissolved, there's this natural kindness and peace and connection that's inside of our DNA. And when that's there, and you can really look at somebody in the eye and feel their heart at the same time, and know that they're just asking for help in some way, or just want to be seen, it's a gift. I mean, I think I was kind of jumping around a little bit, but it's just so much that these practices bring, because you're not being yanked around by your emotion or expectations or whatever, that there's a natural state of peace. And I think with that peace comes this confidence. So yeah, it's powerful.
Yeah. And so part of my experience when you were talking made me think of how emotions have often made me feel vulnerable.
In what way?
And well, I think in the sense of not knowing what to do with them. And instead of paying attention to them, the tendency was to draw back from them.
Yeah.
But with mindfulness, I've been forced to look at them, befriend them.
Exactly.
I for some reason I think of anxiety in my interiority as a woman who's become a very dear friend of mine, who has a message for me, and I have to pay attention to it and listen to it. But it's not scary anymore. And there's something about being able to confront that vulnerability that builds confidence. And that was something that kind of came to me when you were talking. Something about the leaning into the vulnerability of our emotions, of our interior world, actually creates a more resilience. And you use the word flexible.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there is a lot of resilience, but yeah, I don't know if did you finish your thought?
Yeah, no, I think it did. Yeah.
Yeah. Because one thing, I say it often in the show, it's this is from Dale Carnegie, goes, at our, understand that you're not dealing with intellectual beings. You're dealing with, people of feeling. We're beings of feeling, we're always going to have emotions about everything, and we're kind of, and we can be driven by them, or we can be empowered by them. And sometimes it's kind of a little bit of both, or a lot of both in some ways. And when we begin to sit and get still, and this is why meditation is so important, that we get to just be quiet and like I said, get still as well. And we can just begin to feel our body, feel our emotions rising and falling, get to know our mind as well. And we're none of those things. Like we're this very strange awareness. This, I've heard people speak to it as like pure potentiality. And then what do you do with that potential? That's from Deepak Chopra. And it's like, but when you realize you have like unlimited potential, but what gets in the way of that is us, or what can get in the way is our emotions. But it's like when you know that you can move out of them, or at least like when my heart gets broken or I get really sad, like it could be days, weeks, a long time, months until we overcome. But these practices have always helped me to realize like, I'm in the valley right now. I'm in the valley of darkness, but I will come back into the light eventually. I just need to keep practicing or just be with it, and it's not scary, to be overcome by a particular emotion. Just lean into it, I was watching something on Charles Munger, who's like he's like 98 years old and one of the best investors in the financial markets like ever. And he wrote today, he said on this recently, he goes, the world is not driven by greed, it's driven by envy. And I was like, whoa, I was like, that is a great, incredible way to talk about the society that we live in right now. And, when we begin to, and I know I keep coming back to meditation because it is a core practice to any kind of mindfulness, because you have to go into the non-doing in order to be more effective at the doing, and the only way to non-do is to sit and practice, and but once we kind of get on the inside, you realize that we don't need a lot, and I think like, instead of buying, like I don't have a lot of stuff in my place. Like I like to have good shoes and I like to eat good food and nice clothes and stuff like that. But I don't need, the latest trend in whatever it is to satisfy me in some ways, or like in a very temporary way. Or, the envy part is like, looking what everyone else has and wondering why I don't. And I just feel like, when you get to know that yourself, like you're not, you definitely get into the sustainability, but you become more kind to yourself. So therefore you're going to be more kind to other people. And we're hardwired with this vulnerability and this empathy. And it just takes a little bit of practice to realize that it's right there all the time and it's waiting to be used. and or accessed for yourself and the world around you.
Thank you so much to Will for talking with me. You can find Will's yoga and meditation services at willnotfear.com. And his podcast with John McCaskill is at mentalkingmindfulness.com. I'll see you around.